This is where we stopped the last time. Can you all hear me clearly?
From this end, yes.
All right. And you can see the screen.
Yes.
All right, I believe everybody's there. So we'll get started. We stopped at BIOS and UEFI technologies. Okay. So I think there's a lab that came up. Just compiling all our labs. So there's a lab that came up that talks about this lab reboot. Okay, you have to put a computer so it's called practical. Okay, so we add this to the lab as soon as we set. Because once we assemble those computers, we now have to run the test for us to see. Okay, so that's where the function of this investigate BIOS UEFI settings pops up. Okay. The truth is, for most of my training, students actually go to buy these computer systems. That's how it is in school. That's when I train in school. School come together. I think I mentioned it before. They go to the market, get the parts, assemble it, do anything that. But for now, let's just work with what we have. So the one says enter your BIOS, power on the computer, plug it. You have to physical one, so we have to store for the day will be practical. Okay, so we have this to the practical we have. So let's proceed. Okay, there. All right, we need to watch this video. So give me a minute to understand. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hello there, we are back in the UEFI BIOS, and this time we're here to change some settings. In this video, we get to configure the UEFI BIOS, and we are going to explore the following items. We will set up our boot options, customize our security settings, take part in some interface configurations, and even use the firmware backup and update tool. So let's begin. We want to configure our boot options. Now you'd think we'd jump straight into motherboard settings and hit boot, but technically we don't even have to go there. On the main UEFI BIOS screen, I can quickly and easily see my boot order listed in this horizontal toolbar. Now this is awesome because if I want my optical drive to be given more preference than something else, I can just click and drag that optical drive to the front of the list. And now it's being given the first boot order preference, such as the optical drive would be booted from before the hard disk drive or USB or anything else. This is great. Now this feature does depend on your motherboard and UEFI firmware, so let's take a look at the official method as well. We'll go into settings, and then I can go ahead and click on boot. And inside of here we'll see this massive list. Now before we just dive into this list, I'd like to take note of the boot mode select. With boot mode select here, I see that the default option is Legacy and UEFI. It has been predicted that in the next couple of years, Legacy will no longer exist. It is here at this time to allow our board to be backward compatible with devices that require Legacy BIOS settings. If you'd like to, you can select the option and you'd actually be able to click UEFI only, as long as you know your devices will still be supported. Let's continue. So down below is my list. My current boot option 1 is set as my optical drive, the UEFI CD-DVD. That's from our previous drag and drop maneuver. To modify this list, you can just click on any one of these items, such as, for example, boot option 1, and I can choose what device will be booted first. For example, how about my USB key? There we go. And now that's first. And you see that horizontal list from left to right has changed up above. We can also go and click on any one of these items and use the plus or minus arrows to move them up or down on the list as well. I personally like the drag and drop option we saw previously. Next, it's time to take a look at some security settings. Back to motherboard settings and then into security. We can find some important settings that we can configure. Here in the security settings, let's take a look at the passwords. The administrator password can be set to prevent other people from accessing and changing your BIOS settings. I'll click enter, and we're going to make this thing, there's already a password on it. If it was Cisco, we're going to make it Cisco again. Create new password, Cisco. Confirm new password, Cisco. And now our administrator password is Cisco. If you want to change and save our BIOS, you're going to need that password of Cisco to do it. Now the user password down below, this is special. This can be set in order to prevent the operating system from loading on your machine until a user has entered the correct user password stored here in BIOS. Further, there's this feature called UKey. The UKey feature allows the BIOS administrator to dedicate a password to a specific USB key or flash drive. The USB key or flash drive will be needed to be plugged into your machine when a user wants to access the operating system of the machine. Wow, never knew a USB flash drive could be so important. Let's continue on and take a look at some of the interface configuration settings. In the main settings area, we're going to go into advanced. And inside of advanced, we're going to access the integrated peripherals. Within the integrated peripherals, we're going to find a good amount of settings to control. In this section, we have the ability to control the onboard LAN controller. This is our physical network card of the device. We can actually disable it here if we don't want to use it. We take a look at Wi-Fi and Bluetooth controller. We can also control if the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth components are allowed to be used on the computer. Think of this as using software to disable individual hardware components on the physical computer before the operating system even got a chance to use it. This is awesome. We can even make changes to how the SATA hard drives are going to be viewed. For example, I can click enter on SATA mode. We can have these SATA hard drives in the legacy IDE mode, current AHCI mode, or even by utilizing RAID. On top of all that, down below, we can customize that the SATA connections are allowed to be hot swappable as well. Let's back up a little bit and take a look at some USB configuration. In settings, advanced, USB configs, we want to take a look here and see that we can actually control both legacy USB support as well as disabling or enabling the USB controller itself. With this coming into mind, I want you to imagine this machine being in a high risk or high profile environment, and you have to be the IT professional that is concerned about people bringing in external USB flash drives. Problem identified and problem solved. Let's take a step back. Now what we want to take a look at is our Windows configuration. Right here in the Windows configuration, we can control how quickly our machine will boot. We can do this by activating Fast Boot or by activating MSI Fast Boot. These will allow your systems to come online more quickly by skipping some of the more thorough post-verification tests. Next, we want to talk about what makes our machine boot in the morning, and that's our wake up event settings. We can click on this item to control what is allowed to wake up our computer and turn it on. There's a couple here, not too many. We have one last section to cover in this video, and we're going to go all the way back, and we're going to head over to mFlash. mFlash is all about firmware updates for our UEFI BIOS. We will have the ability to save our current BIOS to a USB flash drive that's plugged in. This will allow us to restore it at a later date. We also have the ability to update the BIOS using this tool. So for example, I can click Save BIOS to Storage. And there is my disk, which I can click on. Leave the default. And it's saving it to my USB flash drive. By using the Update BIOS feature, we can load a BIOS file that is on a USB flash drive that is plugged into our machine. Now this is going to be awesome because this is your storing and recovery, especially when you have settings that you're concerned about losing and not having in the future. We can use the Update BIOS feature to actually select a file off of a USB thumb drive. And here, if I had a BIOS ready to go, I can click on the UEFI flash thumb drive and be able to update the BIOS itself. Now, while every UEFI BIOS will be a little bit different, you should have a much better understanding of how to configure some of the important settings within your UEFI BIOS.
Okay. So we watched the video. Now remember, the settings are always different. They are not all the same. Like your particular system might be different from this. What is important is you understand the setting of the system. Okay, so let's talk about it. All right. The legacy BIOS supports some security features, okay, to protect the BIOS. That's the legacy BIOS. Now, the legacy BIOS means that is the before they created the interface of the graphical interface of that UEFI. There is a legacy BIOS, which is number one. Everybody knows for the new ones. That most of these HP, Sony, all these organizations always like to. Okay, so the UEFI security, you always find this UEFI aspect on mostly on laptops, either laptops or if you're buying a complete system, HP. But if you're assembling computers yourself, if you're assembling yourself, like maybe you went to buy your own board and all that, most board don't set, most motherboard don't set the default setting to UEFI. They only set it to legacy BIOS. So we're going to be seeing all those things when we're doing the practical. So UEFI has all right. So the legacy BIOS supports some security features to protect the BIOS setting, while UEFI has additional security features. Okay, these are some common security features found in BIOS UEFI system. All right, so we're going to look. One of it is, let's talk about the password. These are the password allow for different levels of access to the BIOS setting. Usually, there are two passwords. There are two password settings that can be altered. The supervisor password and the user password. The supervisor password can access all user access passwords and all BIOS screen and setting. The user password gives access to the BIOS based on a defined level. So we're going to look at this table that displays common levels of user access to BIOS. The supervisor password must be set before the user password can be configured. All this you're going to see it when we're doing the practicals. So For the full access, all screens and settings are available except the supervisor password setting. Then there's a limited access that allows you change can be made to certain settings only. For example, the time and date. If you put that, okay, whoever is using this system should not come close to your BIOS, just for him to be able to set his time, you can set it. Then view only access. All screens are available, but no settings can be changed. That means they can all see the BIOS setting, but nobody can go, no other user can access it except you. So then there is no access. There's another setting that when you put it, nobody can access to the BIOS setting except you that you are the engineer. Now, if you are working in an office and you are managing the IT setup of the office has over 500 systems, or let's say 10 systems, and it's connected to server, okay, you can start your security from here to protect your hardware, to protect the configuration of your hardware on the system. You can password and put this level. Give all user limited access to view, but they cannot change anything. They cannot go there and change the hard drive or change the settings of it because they are not the engineer. You know, sometimes when you have some people working in an office, because they've watched what's the name of that online training, they will now come and do practical on the system that you have set up in the office for your organization. So it's better you protect yourself by putting those passwords. So let's look at the drive encryption. Now, this is another good setting. An hard drive can be encrypted to prevent data theft. So you can actually encrypt your data, your hard drive. Encryption changes the data on the drive into code without the correct password. The computer cannot boot, and data read from the hard drive cannot be understood. Even if the hard drive is placed on another computer, the data remains encrypted. Most of the engineers that works in the bank, they do this to protect anybody just coming to carry the hard drive up. Because some people can just access and remove your hard drive. But when you encrypt it, that's what they're trying to tell us. When you encrypt, you will not have any challenges. Okay. So we have what we call LoJack. Now, this encryption is just a particular button there. You see it there. The settings are already there. Just put the setting encrypt. We encrypt your drive. It's not like you have to start writing programming. All right. Okay. So then there's what we call the LoJack. Okay. This is a security features that consists of two programs: the persistence module and the application agent. The persistent module is embedded in the BIOS, while the application agent is installed by the user. So when installed, the persistent module in the BIOS is activated and cannot be turned off. The application agent routinely contacts a monitoring center over the internet to report device information application. The owner can perform the function described. So that's the function you see. Locate the device using Wi-Fi or IG. That's if the system is being stolen. You can actually use the security to get your laptop. That's what they're trying to say. So then we have the trusted platform module. This is a chip designed to secure hardware by storing encryption keys, digital certificate, passwords, and data. TPM is used by Windows to support BitLocker full disk extension. All right, so there's always a BitLocker full disk extension but most of this one you find it on Windows. Windows operating system supports this particular BitLocker. Then we have what we call the secure boot. Secure boot is a UEFI security standard that ensures that a computer only boots an OS that is trusted by the motherboard manufacturer. Secure boot prevents unauthorized OS from being started. Now, this secure boot is what all organizations use. Okay? This is what all organizations always use. Now, why they use this secure boot? When I mean organization, the manufacturer of like HP, Dell, they normally use this, especially when they are selling their branded system. They don't want any engineer to start tampering with it. So they put a secure boot, meaning whatever, once you on the system, it will load into the operating system they put there. Okay? Now, if you don't disable this secure boot, you cannot put any other operating system on that system, except you go to the BIOS and remove secure boot. So most of those laptops you see they sell today, from the setting, you'll find out, oh, this laptop cannot not bootable. You give the engineer. If that engineer is not an expert, he will put different operating system. It will not work. Try to do not work. Do not be loading it until it goes to the secure boot and remove it. Okay? Once you disable the secure boot, then you can put any other operating system. So most of them use this secure boot, and it's always found in the UEFI. So sometimes, if you just don't want to stress yourself, like I gave you the example of somebody who bought laptop. He said he has taken the laptop here, taking it, that he doesn't know that the laptop only works with internet. He wants to do MS Word. He has to connect to internet to open the MS Word. He wants to do this. I said, oh, okay, I understand. And what I did, because I already understand what is going on, I went into the BIOS. I disabled the UEFI. Immediately I disabled the UEFI, both the secure boot and all those things that had to do with UEFI, everything was disabled. And I did what I need to do as easy as possible. And our operating system started working. She had software working. She has been working offline, except she wants to connect herself, she can connect. So that is how it is. All right. So locate, let's look at this diagram. LoJack functions. It locates the device using Wi-Fi or IP geolocation to see the last location. That's one. Then lock the device remotely to prevent access to your personal information. Display a customized message on the screen. Okay. Then we have delete all files on the device to protect personal information and prevent identity theft. So this LoJack function is found under the BIOS. Okay. Find it under the BIOS set, embedded on the BIOS set. So these are the reasons why you have to get into your BIOS when you buy your system to put all this set. Okay, and when you put all the settings, remember, somebody can go there and remove it. So you have to put a level password. Okay. All right, so let's come to how to update the firmware. This most times, comes from the manufacturer of the motherboard. Okay, so let's understand the update of the firmware. Motherboard manufacturer may publish updated BIOS versions to provide enhancements to system stability. Now, where did you get most of this update? If you buy a particular board, yes, every manufacturer of a board always have his own website. They have their drivers. It's what they call drivers. It's what they call drivers that drives all the drivers. There are software, okay, that allow your operating system function properly. We'll get to that stage. So we want to talk about the BIOS. Now, BIOS, what BIOS means is for every BIOS setup, there is always an upgrade as well. Just the way you have your Android phone. Just the way you have your Android phone, you always upgrade your Android phone. Okay, you always update your Android phone. That is how this one. You can always update the BIOS. So motherboard manufacturers may publish update BIOS versions to provide enhancement to system stability, compatibility, and performance. However, updating the firmware is risky. Take note of that. The release notes, such as those shown in the figure, describe the upgrade to the product, compatibility improvements, and the known bugs that have been addressed. Some newer devices operate properly only with an updated BIOS installed. So you can usually find the current version on the main screen of the BIOS/UEFI interface. So before updating motherboard firmware, record the manufacturer of the BIOS and motherboard model. Use this information to identify the exact files to download from the motherboard manufacturer website. Only update the firmware if there are problems with system hardware or to add functionality to the system. Early computer BIOS information was contained in ROM chips. To upgrade the BIOS information, the ROM chip had to be physically replaced. That was in the olden days. But now, which was not always possible. So modern BIOS chips are electronic erasable read-only memory, which can be upgraded by the user without opening computer case. So this process is called flashing the BIOS. So to download a new BIOS, consult the manufacturer website and follow the recommended installation procedure. Installing BIOS software online may involve downloading a new BIOS file, copying or extracting files to removable media, and then booting from the removable media. An installation program prompts the user for the information to complete the process. Many motherboard manufacturers now provide software to flash the BIOS from within an operating system. For example, the ASUS ES Update utility automatically updates the motherboard software drivers and the BIOS version. It also enables the user to manually update a saved BIOS and select a boot logo. When the system goes into POS, the utility is included in the motherboard, or it can be downloaded from the ASUS. So what they are saying is, they always provide software. That's the owner of this board, ASUS board. If you're buying an ASUS motherboard, they will provide you software, tell you that you can upgrade, and they will show you direction to go to their website, how and procedure. So please, it's very important to read all these manuals before you go ahead to install a BIOS, because if your BIOS has issues, condemn that motherboard. Okay. So an improper install or aborted BIOS update can cause the computer to become unstable. I think you have serious issues. All right, so with the question we have, we are still on Zoom. So Zoom will stop the recording in the next few minutes now. Then you log in back. Now, we have the TPM, we have the secure boot, we have the flashing the BIOS, we have the LoJack. Group A security feature that reports device information and location to a monitoring center is called what? How many people do we have on? We have 7 people. It's called what? If you want to answer, you can answer. If you want to send message, you can send message. A security feature that reports device information and location to a monitoring center is called what? Group A.
Secure boots. TPM.
TPM.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right.
Why not?
You're asking why now? Okay, that's the answer. That's the answer. Your answer is wrong. Okay, so I'm going to log out and log in shortly now. Then we'll continue because I need to take this recording. It's already been pinned that I have to take the recording. The recording stop.